Hello, friends. Today I want to talk about what the traumatized brain does when you're experiencing cognitive dissonance. And you tend to be experiencing cognitive dissonance when you're in toxic relationships. And today I want to talk about what happens to the brain so that you can understand why some things that you may want to be doing or some decisions you may want to be making, why you're struggling so much. Because when we don't understand it, it can really cause a lot of shame and you can stay stuck because nothing that's happening makes sense. So, that being said, let's dive in. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a life and relationship coach. I'm the founder of the Thriver School of Transformation, which is a monthly membership where we meet live weekly on Zoom and we work through all of the side effects of narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD together. So, the doors open February 1st to the 5th. So, make sure you watch for when the link is available during those 5 days. Okay, let's talk about cognitive dissonance. First of all, the name alone, cognitive dissonance, cognitive being with your thoughts, your thinking, dissonance being disharmony. Okay, so what happens when you have cognitive dissonance is that your thoughts have obviously disharmony and you're being pulled almost in two separate directions. This is really common when you have a toxic or you're in a toxic relationship because think about a parent to child or child to parent. My family loves me. My family is hurting me. Those are two opposing thoughts, and the brain doesn't like disharmony. So when it's trying to make sense out of both of those things, it does things in a certain way that we need to understand because it does things in a way that can keep you in situations that are harming you. Okay, so just to kind of help you to understand how important it is for the brain to make sense of things and to give meaning to things. I was watching a video the other day on a completely different topic, but she was talking about how the brain likes to give meaning to things. And she asked a question, and I would love to know your answer. So her question was a simple question, and it was, why is the desk the mother of the chair? If you can answer that, like pause this video, answer it down below. There's no right or wrong. Everyone's going to have a different answer. Put an answer down and then come back and watch. So the answer was that it's not. Like the desk is not the mother of the chair. But because you pose the question that way, our brain automatically goes into like logic thinking and it's trying to make sense out of what's going on, or in this case, out of that question. Well, when it comes to cognitive dissonance, our brain tries to do the same thing. It's like, okay, my family loves me, my family is abusive and manipulative. And it's ping ponging back and forth between your logical brain, which is seeing what's going on and looking at the reality, and the emotional brain that's confused because there's emotion with your family. We are hardwired to bond with our family, right? And while some relationships, if they're toxic, it can be very black and white to say, well, then just leave, right? And even then, if you have cognitive dissonance, even then it's hard. But when it comes to family, those natural bonding hormones in our body, the way we're hardwired to bond with our family is out of harmony with just getting up and leaving, or discarding, or going no contact, or staying low contact, whatever decision you make in regards to your personal situation. So what happens in those situations? Well, because it causes so much discomfort, and in the end, your brain, its main job and its main concern is to keep you as far away from pain as possible, and it's there to push you towards pleasure. Well, what happens when you're in cognitive dissonance, and that's she loves me, she hates me, right? Because if you have a person that loves you but is abusing you, then what the brain will do is it goes into coping skills. And one of its favorite coping skills when it has that discomfort of having two opposing thoughts is deny and delete. What your brain will start to do is it will start to notice the things that that family member is doing that are painful, and it will delete them from your mind. It will remove those memories as well as the emotions that are wrapped around those memories. It will store it in its favorite place to store trauma and anything that's overwhelming for the brain, which is in the limbic network. So your conscious mind is no longer paying attention to that pain. And it focuses on that one thing that the person did that was nice. And you forget everything else. And so what happens is somebody in a situation like that, they'll be really overwhelmed with the abuse that they've been undergoing, right? Then the next day or 2 days later, the toxic person will do something small but nice, right? And when you've been being abused, and even just a let up of abuse sometimes feels like a gift, right? So now suddenly there's that nice thing that happened. Well, your brain pays a lot of attention to it. It gives a lot of emotional charge to that one nice thing, and it's deleting all the negative things that happen. So the deny and delete is a quick fix that the brain is doing for you. It thinks it's helping you, but it's actually prolonging your stress and is prolonging the abuse. Because rather than looking at it for what it is, you are denying it, because the brain will do two things. It will reframe it, okay, to make sense. In other words, reframing is an awesome cognitive tool when you're working through negative things and you want to overcome them. But in this case, the brain uses it in a maladaptive way. And it takes a negative thing and that you're undergoing, and it reframes it so that you don't look at it that way. For example, if you have or if you're in a relationship and the person says they love you one day, right? But then 2 days later, they're telling you that you are the worst person in the world. They're insulting you. They're putting you down. They're telling you that you're unlovable, that nothing you do is right, right? And they're really attacking your core sense of self, your self identity. The brain will get stuck in that cognitive dissonance. He or she loves me, but look what he or she just did and said about me. And it will reframe it by saying, or causing you to think like, well, yes, they did that, but maybe I shouldn't have. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe it is my fault. Maybe I'm not seeing, what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I have to try harder. And it reframes it so that you're the problem. Because the brain knows that when you bring the problem to the other person and you point out their behavior, it's met with such animosity and such aggression that that's dangerous. So it's safer to make you the one that is at fault. And this is very much what happens with adult children with toxic, malignant, narcissistic parents. That came out wrong. Toxic, malignant, narcissistic parents. That's what happens because as from childhood, you are taught that your parents are right and they have your best interests at heart. So if they're saying things to you, it's because they're right. And so somehow it must be my fault. That's a reframe that the brain does to alleviate the dissonance. Because now it's like, oh no, mom does love me. Dad does love me. It's just because I did something. It's my fault. And again, you can see how that can keep you stuck in a relationship where you're trying harder and harder and the person is continually abusing you. And the other thing your brain will do is it will lie to you. It will feel more comfortable and more safe lying to you than trying to prove truth to the toxic person. Because trying to prove truth to somebody like that will leave you feeling like a chewed up piece of gum, sucked up with flavor and spit out, because that's how painful it is to try to reason with somebody like that. So it's easier to say, no, that didn't happen, or you're exaggerating it a little bit. It's not really that bad. It's not that big of a deal. Some people have it worse. Or, maybe I'm just, focusing on the wrong thing. It wasn't that bad. And you'll start having those thoughts where you actually start doubting whether what you're going through is what you're going through. Those are the brain's coping skill, because you're battling this cognitive dissonance. You're in a relationship with somebody where you expect love and support. If it was an enemy and they were acting like this, it would be different. You would understand it. You wouldn't have any cognitive dissonance. But because it's somebody you expect love from, that's what creates this discomfort in the brain. So that's understanding the coping skills. Let's understand it neurochemically. So there are 4 hormones or neurotransmitters that are dysregulated when you're having cognitive dissonance. And they are oxytocin, which is the hormone that causes you to want to bond. And then you have endogenous opioids, which give you pleasure and reduce pain. Now, think about it. Just taking those 2 into consideration for the moment, you get this desire to get close to somebody that's hurting you, right? This person is hurting you, but you have this desire to get close to them, to bond with them. Then they're hurting you, but then they get that one moment. Because remember, they know well enough to throw in those tiny little crumbs of love. They give you that one moment, and now you're flooded with these opioids, right? That reduce the pain, all that pain that you were feeling when they were abusing you. You get a relief of that. It feels good. And it's a cycle. But there are 2 others that are dysregulated, and that's corticotropin releasing factor, which is responsible for the stress hormone system. So when you're under a lot of stress, that's going to affect how much cortisol is released into your system. So when you are walking on eggshells 24/7, your body is constantly flooded with cortisol. And then the last hormone that's involved in this chemical cocktail is dopamine. So all those 4 are just out of whack. They're not balanced the way they should be because of the behaviors that you're undergoing in this relationship. When your neurochemicals are out of whack like that, it is so hard to make clear decisions. You don't have clear thinking. The second you start thinking, I need to leave, your body is flooded with this fear and dread that something bad is going to happen. So you're having these intense craving for reciprocity from this person. On top of it, you have this heightened value where you think that this person, like, you cannot live without this person. You've kind of put them so far up on this pedestal. You're hyper focused on the relationship that it becomes all you think about. And it's impossible to make clear decisions when you're like that. So if you have people in your life that hurt you, that manipulate you, that are sabotaging the things that you want to do and the person that you really are, and you've attempted to leave and you find yourself almost unable to understand why you keep going back, it's really important to understand what cognitive dissonance is and all that's going on in your brain and your body. Because when you don't understand it, it just can make you feel like someone took over your body and is controlling you. That's what it feels like. But once you understand it, then you can do something about it. So that being said, hating my lighting right now, but that's okay. I'm going to go with it. Let me give you some tips that can help you. Okay. Tip number 1. I know the thought of going no contact with this person or limiting contact is probably overwhelming. So what I would encourage you to do is start finding ways to spend time with people that are healthy, because these healthy connections are going to help. Just like the toxic person is dysregulating your brain, healthy connections can start helping it to feel more calm and more regulated. The second thing that you're going to want to do if you want to end this cycle, what you're going to want to do is start documenting everything that happens. If you are insulted, if something bad happens, write down what was said to you in a safe place, okay? In a safe place, because I have known so many people that start doing this and it's almost like the other person can detect it, finds what they write and rips it up. Okay, so you're going to want to find a safe place and start keeping track of all the positive things this person does and all of the negative things. When you have that list of all the positives and all the negatives, you're going to start seeing a pattern. You're going to start seeing for every 50 negatives, you might get half a positive. And those positives, you're going to start realizing that they're like next to nothing. They're not even all that as far as a kind thing. It's just that when you're used to such negativity, you get really accepting of things that aren't really all that, right? So start keeping track of that. And the purpose of this is because the brain will delete it until you are convinced that this is bad for you and you have taken your brain and made it focus on reality instead of the deny and delete. You're having it focus on that reality. That's going to help you to stay grounded in truth and grounded in what's really happening instead of jumping towards some kind of toxic hope, okay, that maybe they'll get it this time, maybe they'll understand, maybe they'll change. Instead, you're using what's really happening to keep you grounded. And the third tip I'm going to give you is to encourage you to ask yourself, what am I craving from this relationship? What do I wish I got? Maybe what you're hoping for, if it's a family relationship, is unconditional love and acceptance, which is understandable. You deserve unconditional love and acceptance from family. But if you don't get it from them, that doesn't mean that you can't ever get it from another source, okay? And the most powerful source you can get it from is the love and acceptance you give to yourself. So if you are not unconditionally loving and accepting yourself, then your inner self will look for it from the toxic person. So my last tip is to start really learning to show up for that need, learning how to satisfy that need so that you don't look for it outside of self from somebody that's not really giving it to you anyway. So I hope these tips help. And if you struggle with doing this alone, remember the Thriver School of Transformation opens up in February for 5 days. And we're really going to be uprooting negative beliefs and really strengthening our self-identity and our self-love. So if you want to join us, it's $79.99 a month. You get 9 to 12 live meetings and you become part of a beautiful international community.